The MSc in Human Resource Management is a Level 9 programme designed specifically to help students develop a career in human resource management.
HR are now partners and operate at the top level in companies, supporting the company achieve its goals and doing that through its people.
The content of the programme has been carefully designed to reflect the realities of the HR profession. Key issues like data analytics, creating healthy organisations, talent development have all been included in the programme, as well as the pivotal aspects of HR such as recruitment and selection and performance management.
So for most jobs in HR, a CIPD accredited qualification is mandatory, and if you study with us, you can achieve that in 1 year.
It's a programme that seeks to blend academic research and current academic research with very experienced industry people.
The lecturers have really good practical backgrounds, so they're able to relate the material in a very practical way for the benefit of the students.
The programme itself is delivered on a full-time basis but also a part-time basis. Full-time students complete the programme within 12 months. Part-time students complete the programme across 2 years. HR is a discipline that's needed in every organisation around the world. This programme will give students a strong foundation for launching their career in terms of employability.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tricia O'Shaughnessy and I'm the Postgraduate Programme Manager here in Cork University Business School. You're all very welcome to our first in a series of webinars we'll be running throughout the spring. The next one takes place on April 22nd at 1 p.m. This will be a marketing webinar with guest speakers organised by the MSc in Management and Marketing and the MSc in Strategic Marketing and Practice. So keep an eye out for other events in the postgrad series. Today for our seminar, Putting the People Back in HR, I'm delighted to welcome our panel. I would like to thank them for their time in engaging in this event today. We have Maeve O'Sullivan, who is the Programme Director of the MSc in Human Resource Management, Caroline McEnery, the Managing Director of the HR Suite and HR Employment Law Expert, Dr Meredith Storey, who's the Education Manager for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Academy. We also have Gareth OKeefe, the Senior Director of Global Customer Success at Solar Winds. We're also delighted to be joined by James Porter, who is our current MSc in Human Resource Management student. In addition, we're joined by Stefan Duce, the Programme Director of the very popular Higher Diploma in Human Resource Management, which is a part-time programme. So just a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. Maeve will be interviewing each of our guest speakers throughout the event. I'll also talk a little bit at the end of the event about the application system and how to apply. And there is an opportunity to ask questions, so do feel free to pop your questions into the chat function and we'll answer them during the event. So to kick off, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Maeve O'Sullivan, the Programme Director of the MSc in Human Resource Management.
So really just to talk about the MSc in Human Resource Management, we're delighted to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about the programme and some of the highlights of the programme. So the MSc in Human Resource Management is a Level 9 CIPD accredited programme, which we run here at the Cork University Business School. It is run on a full-time basis, and that is for 1 year. It's also run on a part-time basis, and that is over 2 years. So in terms of the way that it is delivered, there is a very structured timetable, 2 afternoons and evenings per week for full-time students and 1 afternoon and evening per week for part-time students. We have a number of very well regarded lecturers and guest speakers who contribute to the programme. And this year we have introduced a very interesting applied research project element to the master's programme, which replaces the dissertation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So just in terms of the entry requirements for the programme, so we look for a 2:1 degree at undergrad level. So that can be a degree in any discipline. It doesn't need to be in business or HR or the general business area, indeed. You don't need, if you meet those entry requirements, you don't require any specific experience related to HR, but if you don't meet those requirements, then we look at recognition of prior learning, and we look at industry-specific experience which can contribute to your qualifications. So just in terms of some of the careers that can come, and we will discuss that in a little while with one of our alumnus from the programme, there are many career paths that people tend to choose once they have completed the programme related to HR, and then in the wider context in terms of leading and managing people. So we have alumnus who work in the public sector, the private sector, and indeed the not-for-profit sector. So we will talk a little bit more about the programme in a little while, but the title of today's seminar is Putting the People Back in HR. So I have been asked to explain why that's the topic, and I think the pandemic has given us a very good opportunity to reflect on HR, on its role, and a few things come to mind in terms of why we need to put the people back in HR. So I think the recognition that a company's workforce is its most valuable, are one of its most valuable assets. So we have seen, particularly with the pandemic, how people have been furloughed, out of work. Well-being and mental health are big issues that have impacted on people's lives, and these are areas where HR has a very, very important role to play. Information, data analytics, understanding your customers, understanding your employees. Data analytics is extremely important in today's business world, and that's something we focus very strongly on in the programme. And then, we know that upheaval is coming more quickly, and the only thing that we know in life that's certain is that uncertainty and living in a volatile, uncertain world is here to stay. So in terms of leadership and communication and bestowing and exhibiting the values that we should be exhibiting as a society and as organisations, HR can take the lead in that. And then, living in today's world, sustainability is very much on the radar, and I'm delighted that in a little while we'll be speaking to Dr Meredith Storey from the UN Sustainable Development Goals Network. So sustainability is a very big feature, and there are a number of the UN Sustainable Development Goals that HR can take a lead in an organisation in helping with. So this is why the topic, putting the people back in HR, is important. We're going to explore that in more detail as we go through the seminar. But for now, Trish, back to you.
Thank you, Maeve. I'd now like to introduce you to our first speaker that Maeve is going to interview. So we have Caroline McEnery, who is the Managing Director of the HR Suite and a HR and employment law expert. Caroline.
Hi, Trish.
How are you, Caroline? It's lovely to have you joining us today. Many thanks indeed.
My absolute pleasure, Maeve. Delighted to oblige.
So, Caroline, we've gotten to know each other quite well over the past 12 months. You are a guest speaker on our higher diploma in HRM, which we will focus on today as well, which is our Level 8 programme, which we offer here in Cubs, as well as a guest speaker on our Masters in HR, which is our Level 9 programme. You're also very kindly partnering with us this year in terms of providing an applied research project, and we will explore that a little more with some of the other speakers. But maybe just to start, you might tell us a little bit more about yourself and your HR journey.
Absolutely. I suppose I started my career many moons ago in Kerry Group. I would have gone to college by night, so I would see huge value and merit in the opportunity that students can do the qualification by night, which is the route that I took. I worked full-time in Kerry Group at the time, did my qualifications by night up to my master's level. I was with Kerry Group for 9 brilliant years, loved every minute of my time there. Fabulous opportunity, really progressive, really focused on growth, opportunities, learning. Then I joined a company called the Garvey Group, which is retail and hospitality. And obviously in a business like that, people is at the forefront because it's all about customer service, it's all about retaining your staff, it's achieving best practice standards, and was very proud to work with them for 12 years. And my current venture, I suppose, is I set up the business, the HR suite, 11 years ago now. So I run the HR suite. I have a brilliant team of staff with me. We have an office in Dublin and we have an office in Kerry. And we provide outsourced HR advice to companies throughout the country. So we do things like if you are a small SME and you've no HR at all, we would provide HR advice, contracts and handbooks. And then for large organizations who have very experienced HR professionals, we would provide special training, we would investigations, help with competency frameworks, help with HR strategy work, and lots of other interesting projects like that. So must say I love the day job. I'm also an adjudicator with the Workplace Relations Commission. So I hear employment law and equal status equality cases for the government. And that's kind of a good summary, Maeve, of I suppose what my career has evolved into.
Thank you. And that's you've got a wealth of experience there, Caroline, and that has come through when you've guest lectured with us on both our programmes, and the students have commented on the breadth of your experience and your knowledge in the HR field and beyond. So, as I've mentioned already, Caroline, the title of this webinar is Putting the People Back in HR. So, why do you think it is that the HR profession has received some negative press in recent times?
I suppose I think it's important to balance it. I think that many organisations maybe don't place the emphasis on HR that they should. And I think that's probably a big root cause of the issue. And it's been focused more on, what do we have to do rather than what should we do to achieve the strategic growth. And we know we can't achieve the strategic growth the business wants and needs without harnessing its best talent, its people. So I think it's maybe HR hasn't been at the strategic table as much as it should. And I think it's been more reactive than proactive. But I think COVID has rebalanced that a lot for organisations where they've started to see, okay, well, we really need to mind our people more. We really need to align our HR strategy more to what our business goals are, because otherwise we're just not going to achieve.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. And just we revamped our HR Masters in HRM program last year, and we that focus on the strategic HRM, as you say, is really key. And leading by example and having those values, and those are things that we focus on strongly during the program. So that leads me on to the next question. So why do you think a strong and competent HR organisation is so important for company success? I mean, you have touched on some of those points, but you might just elaborate on that if you would, please.
Yeah, so I suppose what we've seen, in businesses in general is the business is going to strategically identify what are its goals. But then ultimately how we innovate is down to the innovation culture within the business and the structures and systems in terms of growth, in terms of having new skills and the right skills for that future growth. Many organizations have pivoted in the last 12 months, again, having built that resilience, that flexibility, all those key drivers to facilitate strategic business growth. to me, without having a HR strategy that is identifying, okay, what are our priorities in the coming year that we really need to focus on? So I'll give you a basic example to identify, have we got a competency framework in place? Because that starts with what are our core values in the organization, which sets the tone in relation to our culture. And then those core values cascade down into what are the competencies in terms of what we recruit for, what are the competencies we do and emphasize induction, what are the competencies we train people for, what are those core values that we ensure are displayed in line with our culture. That cascades down into our performance management system. So without having those strategic priorities and that focus on a project like core competencies and core values, cascading that throughout the organization, the organization is going to freewheel. And we know how important culture is. To me, culture is the board's responsibility, it's the leader's responsibility, and then it permeates in all things we do and all things we achieve and how we do things. But it needs to be set at the most strategic senior level so that we lead by that example, but also the project plan is in place, because it won't happen by itself.
Yeah, and I agree with you very much there, Caroline, and that strategic focus that you talk about and those core competencies. And we know from the programme and we know from our lecturers, and indeed bringing in top quality guest lecturers like yourself from leading companies in Ireland, that focus on culture is so important. And what's interesting coming through on our applied research projects this year, a number of the projects that have been proposed by industry are focusing on evaluating the culture in the organisation and looking to see if it's fit for purpose in a 21st century, modern organisation. And you touched earlier on HR having the reputation of being somewhat reactive. And, it would seem to me, Caroline, that this is an ideal time with this crisis, and we know that crises are coming more often. It would seem to me that this is an ideal time for HR to stand up and really take the lead in organisations. And you have spoken before to me about the strategic importance of both HR and finance in any organisation. Could you maybe speak a little bit to that, please?
I suppose I did my master's thesis on the balanced scorecard, and I'm a big fan of that Norton and Kaplan concept that what's measured gets done, what's measured gets improved. And for me, I suppose there's 4 key areas in any business that really need a spotlight put on them. And they are, what about our people as a key, KPI and a key driver to any successful business? What about our operations, operationally, our systems, how we do things, etc. Our customer, because we've no business without our customer, and then our finance. And for me, I suppose they are core to our success. And rather than being reactive and just firefighting, for me, it's really important that we put KPIs or key performance indicators around all those key metrics. And our people piece, to me, starts there, because if we just focus on the bottom line, potentially we're impacting customers negatively, potentially we're focused on staff issues, etc. And eventually we'll see cracks throughout the organisation. Whereas if you start with your people, recruiting amazing people in line with your core values and core competencies, training them, developing them, giving them feedback, performance managing them, rewarding them, looking after their well-being, in turn, your operations are going to be very well run. In turn, your customers are going to be happy. In turn, you'll make money. And obviously, I appreciate we need to set appropriate goals in relation to all of those 4. But I think you often find in organizations that as cracks start to appear, oftentimes we have to go back to the people piece to solve the problem. And that's where we need to start with. So for success, I think set yourself up for success by having a good framework around your HR from the very outset, rather than waiting for the cracks to appear at a later date.
Yeah, and that's really good advice, Caroline. And I think sometimes when when times are tight, very often organisations start shedding their workforce. But we've seen from past crises, such as the global financial crisis, that that can be a short-term measure that has long-term negative consequences. So investing in your talent, recruiting and retaining the right people, and a number of our applied research projects are focusing as well on talent development and an audit of the talent programs that are ongoing. So I suppose, you're ideally placed to tell us about what qualities you think are needed for today's HR profession. What are the key qualities that you can identify, Caroline?
I suppose resilience to me is really important. I mean, HR is a career that you're problem solving, you're taking on a lot of the strategic challenges, you're also dealing with HR issues employees may have, you're dealing with well-being, etc. So there's lots of challenges in relation to ensuring that you put on your own oxygen mask first. So I think resilience is really important for any leader, but particularly for those that work in HR. I think emotional intelligence is key, because if you don't have that empathy, if you can't build relationships, if you can't, I suppose bring out the in people, that's a really core skill that's required. And I think attention to detail is really important, because ultimately in employment law and in HR in general, we need to get it right. You can't draft a set of core competencies and not have the devil in the detail right, so that the leadership team, don't understand them well enough, or they're not going to be able to, put them into practice. The same as if we're given employment law advice, etc. So you need to be good at detail. But I think one of the biggest skills also is the ability to be flexible and to be good at change management, because there's one thing for sure: change is the major change factor, now, and we've seen how organizations who have been able to pivot quickly and bring the team with them have been really successful in relation to success around that change. Whereas if you have people who are maybe over procrastinating, or who find it difficult to make those changes, then I think that will be a real barrier to success going forward. So they would be some of the key skills, Maeve, that I would see to be successful in the whole area of HR.
Great. And when we were talking earlier, Caroline, you mentioned the idea of early career HR professionals getting a general qualification, and then maybe developing their career based on their skills and their strengths. Could you speak to us briefly maybe about how that might be done, and what advice you might give to an early career HR professional setting out?
Absolutely. I suppose to me, when you do your primary degree, that gives you a really good sense of, is this the right area for me? Do I enjoy it? I'm getting lots of knowledge, and it's really building your confidence and your skills. But at that stage, you're now, in my mind, given the array of choice from that a la carte menu to decide in HR. Are you more interested in employment law? Are you more interested in training? Are you more interested in recruitment? Are you more interested in actually using your HR qualification to pivot into line management and management as an area? Because HR is so universal. It's got so much it's so applicable in so many different roles and so many different careers, that I would always feel that you should do as you suit your personality. Because if you get a job that you really love, you'll never work a day in your life. And for me, I suppose in the HR suite, I do a lot of work in relation to general HR, because we're consultants in all the different areas. When I'm recruiting, I'll recruit specialists in different areas. So I'll recruit somebody who's amazing at training. I'll recruit somebody who's amazing at employment law and industrial relations, because it's very difficult, even though, as a business, we offer the whole offering, we recruit specialists in different areas, because it's really hard to be good at everything in HR. And I think it's trying to ensure that you identify what are your strengths early so that you can get experience, and even doing those projects, Maeve, it's a great opportunity to get really good insights. And we've seen ourselves from taking placement students over the years, you know, they come in and they act, if for example, you select the right placement student who is really interested in the area you're putting them into, they flourish. So it's really important to get that fit right for you personally and for the organization. And that's something I think we need to assess our own personality, our own preferences, and use the opportunity to get experience where you can to test that then.
Great. Well, listen, Caroline, I think we could talk for a lot longer, and I look forward to doing so again. Thank you very much for offering those insights and for taking the time. It's been absolutely lovely to get that experience and insights from you today. So thank you. Back to you, Trish.
Thank you very much for that, Caroline. Really insightful. I'd now like to invite our next speaker that Maeve will be interviewing. We're delighted to be joined by Dr. Meredith Storey. Meredith is an education manager at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Academy. You're very welcome, Meredith.
Thank you, Trish.
Hello, Meredith. How are you? It's lovely to see you, and welcome to our webinar. You're joining us from Manhattan, from the home of the UN. So it's absolutely lovely to have you with us today. So Meredith, I might start. We have a few minutes, so you might just tell me just a little bit about your organisation to start with, if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe before I get to what the organization is, I might just touch a little bit on the Sustainable Development Goals as a whole. So back in 2015, the UN launched a rather ambitious agenda called Agenda 2030. You might have heard of that. The main component piece of Agenda 2030 is the Sustainable Development Goals and the objectives that they've set forth with these 17 goals and 169 targets to figure out how we can best promote sustainability globally, locally, but also through incremental changes, with the targets indicating change over the next 15 years. So as you can imagine, like whenever the UN sends out a grand agenda, there's also a lot of work and background noise that goes on in order to create the relevance for this across countries, across regions, and even across communities. So from there, actually just before the goals were launched, the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network was launched out of Columbia University by Professor Jeffrey Sachs, the economist. So what that organization is my parent organization. And what they work to do is find data-based, scientific evidence-based solutions to sustainable development related to food and agriculture use, related to land use, related to a number of different indicators. You might have actually heard of them. We're the people that make the happiness survey that comes out every year and says how happy your country is, or that does the SDG indexes and dashboards that ranks countries' performance over time. So that's our relationship to the UN. We were born as a UN initiative in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And my specific area, the SDG Academy, is the educational flagship of UNSDSN. We create and we curate massive open online courses and freely available pedagogical tools, educational content. We just started a podcast and a book club, just kind of all kinds of weird toys, things that you can like embed into your teaching practices. So that's what the SDG Academy does. But I think one thing that's very important to say in this context is we have a very large mandate to bring global education at all levels to everyone, but we're a very small team. And so the opportunity to work with the Cork University Business School has just been phenomenal for us, because we're really looking forward to seeing what we can do differently and seeing how we can refine our practices to fit this global audience.
Yeah, and you know, Meredith, we are so happy to be working with you. Our students were very keen to work with your organisation, and as you've put forward a number of projects, and indeed students from the Masters in Management and Marketing will be working with you as well. So there's great excitement here in Cubs regarding the projects, and we have become a member of your community of practice as well, and there's a lot lot of interesting stuff going on there. And many of us are interested in working on the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's a great opportunity for CUBS and for our students to engage with you as well. So can you tell me a little bit about just maybe a couple of the projects that you have proposed? You might just touch on a few of them briefly.
Absolutely. So just to go back to what you were saying a second ago, I think the connection with UCC, with the business school, is just phenomenal. The fact that you've been members of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, I think since its founding, at least for the last 3 years, I mean, just shows that you do have this spirit embedded in the work that you do, and the fact that you're a member of the community of practice, just this is something that you're really to. So I'm glad that you took on the 3 projects that we've asked for. We'd ask for 1 million more. It's just so exciting to see this work going forward. So the 3 that I'd like to talk about today, if that's all right, our recruitment process. We're really looking to be able to attract and retain the best people that we can. We're a grant-funded institution, so we're always running into how do we get the best people with what we've got. The intern onboarding process, as a small institution, a nonprofit basically, we're constantly onboarding interns. I mean, I probably do it 3 times a year for large intern cohorts. And that is, I mean, I've been with the organization for almost 3 years at this point, and it's just a very repetitive task. And you want to make sure that you're always sharing the best information, even though it might seem redundant to yourself. And then certainly the largest undertaking of the project would be the fact that we're going to be opening a new office. We have a New York-based office, we have an office in Paris, and we're going to be opening a Malaysian office in Kuala Lumpur at the end of summer. So the timing of these projects is certainly wonderful, because this is really a sweet spot for us. To just speak to COVID for a moment, like I agree what was said by Caroline before about resilience. So it's just wonderful that you'll be able to help us get there.
Yeah, and we're really excited, and time is a little bit against us, but just in terms of the projects, it is a change from the traditional dissertation model, and the aim of the applied research project is to reach out to industry, and we have over 30 projects from 20 different organizations, from the public sector, the private sector, and the not-for-profit sector, and we have some fantastic projects, and the idea is that students can engage with industry partners, they can develop their networks, they can develop their critical writing and thinking skills, and to work with the organization to develop solutions and recommendations to these people-centered problems. So again, you know, a sincere thank you to you for being involved, Meredith. We're really excited about the projects that we have, and we're just about to kick off the projects. So I would like to thank you for taking part. Again, we could talk at a lot more length, and time is against us, but if you have time, you might stay around for the chat later if you can. So for the moment, goodbye, and thank you very much. Over to you, Trish.
Thank you very much, Meredith. That was great. I'd now like to introduce you to our next speaker. We're delighted to be joined by Gareth OKeefe. Gareth is the Senior Director, Global Customer Success at SolarWinds.
Hello, Gareth. It's great to see you, and thank you very much for joining us. I hope you're keeping well today.
Yeah, doing great, Maeve. Thanks a million, and really interesting to hear the previous speakers as well, Meredith and Caroline. So fantastic to be here today.
Yeah, so no pressure.
No, none at all.
So Gareth, you actually graduated from the MSc last week. So sincere congratulations to you and to your classmates. We are so proud of all that you have done. I might ask you just briefly to give us a brief overview, maybe of your where you're at now in your career, and maybe why you undertook the program in the first place.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And it was great to mark the occasion last week of the graduation. We started in 2018. To look at my career, so 30 years, that's why there's grey hair. 30 years ago, I left college, having done a BCom in UCC. And I suppose that my career can kind of be broadly compartmentalized into 3 10s, if you like. The first 10 years was, Smurfit graduate management program. and realized in that role that I was gravitating towards people, whether that was people leadership or customers, and ended up that part of my career very much in sales and sales leadership, including working for people like Dennis O'Brien in ESA Telecom and BT. Then the next portion of my career was very much about leadership development, and worked in a consultancy called First 100, where we were executive coaches of people who were in their first 100 days in a new role. That was really exciting. And then the last 10 years have been back into people leadership in places like Vodafone Global Enterprise, and now SolarWinds, which is a US software company headquartered in Austin, Texas, but actually have 200 people or thereabouts based in Citygate and Mahon here in Cork. My first 4 years there had been in renewal sales leadership, chasing a number. And 4 years ago, I wanted to do something to change my career away from sales and more towards different leadership roles without having to chase a number and the pressure that brings. And that's what prompted me to consider the MSc in HR, which was a fantastic move, and really enjoyed my 2 years there. So that's kind of where I've got to. Customer success is my current role in SolarWinds, and that's very much about ensuring that you look after your customers, that they want to continue to stay with you, buy more from you, and advocate for you in the marketplace. So
okay,
that
great.
brings us up to date. Yeah.
Up to date, great. And what, in terms of career progression, Gareth, what do you think are the key benefits to you of having undertaken the programme?
Yeah. So I think, so first of all, it's never too late to progress your career, okay? And it's never too late to make a step change in your career either. So whether you're starting out or midway through your career or in the latter half of your career, it's always good to keep educating yourself and to keep challenging yourself, which was one of the motivators behind me doing this. I think that the program at a very practical level within my current organization allowed me to move into the HR department for a little bit, where I headed up their learning and development function within sales in particular. But more importantly, I think the outcome of attending the master's program is that it has broadened my leadership capability. And I know Caroline touched on this earlier, whether it's to do with strategy, learning and development, recruitment. We even touched on finance and touched on expat and multiculturalism and so on in organizations. And all of those topics are critically important in line management in organizations. So whether you're in sales or customer success, the rounding that the HR management program provides you is hugely beneficial in your career.
Great, and that's something that we have found, Gareth. A lot of our alumni are not strictly in the HR department, but they're in leadership roles in organisations. So, just to my last point, and we might touch on this just briefly. From the alumnus or the alumni perspective, what would be the key benefits of participating in the programme? Yeah,
so look, for me, it's like, career progression is not just about being a subject matter expert, but it's also about being really well networked, whether it's in your city, your country, your industry. But progressing your career is all about developing your network. So even at a micro level, there was 18 of us did the program. We're all constantly in touch with each other. Even last week, 2 of us were talking to each other just at a local level about people that we knew, and someone was recruiting someone that I knew, and what did I have to say about them, and so on. So that building of the network is critically important, and experiencing people from the public sector, which I would never have generally come across because I've always worked in the private sector, or people in the not-for-profit sector, and so on. So the network piece is critical in terms of the alumni, and was one of the nice unintended consequences of undertaking the program.
Yeah, and then that's something that's very strong in UCC, that focusing on the alumni and bringing the alumnus back. So time is against us, Gareth.
No problem.
There's a lot more we could talk about, but thank you for taking the time. And if you have time, you might hang around for the chat and the questions. So lovely to see you.
Thanks, Maeve. You too. Bye bye.
I'd now like to introduce our final speaker. So we actually have a current MSc in Human Resource Management student with us. I'm delighted to introduce James Porter.
Hi, how are you?
Good to see you, James. How are you keeping?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. We're all very excited today. We all got our research project, so there's a lot of happy people inside in our master's course.
Yes, we were beavering away early this morning, so we're all set. I think we are indeed. James, thank you for joining us, and you're taking a little break from your studies. So, Ty, you know, we can talk for a long time, but you might just tell me, you know, we've spoken before about your career, and I know that you've had a career in HR, but I think really your focus with the program, if I understood correctly, was maybe to develop it and to look at specific areas in HR. So you might just briefly tell us a little bit about why you undertook the program and what the benefits that are for you from a career progression point of view.
Yeah, definitely. So my background is in recruitment. So what I kind of wanted to do with the master's was to move maybe into something more of a generalist role. And I suppose that was me being quite naive coming into this course, because this course has been fantastic, both on kind of a practical and theoretical level. But I suppose with regards to the lecturers and also the guest speakers, you've gotten that really good insight into what the department's makeup is. Like HR is such an integral and strategic, I suppose, element of any organization. And I suppose what I've kind of seen a lot of from some really great lecturers and guest lecturers is the psychological side of things, and also around the learning and development. Like, it's kind of what Caroline was talking about earlier around the competency development. Like, these are kind of, I suppose, the meat and veg around what you're supposed to be doing within an organization, you know, enabling people to grow, enabling the company to achieve its strategic goals and objectives, and really kind of, you know, to get that organization to the next level. So that's I suppose kind of what's opened my eyes with this course in the different people we've spoken to.
Yeah, and you know, just touching back on what you said, and Caroline mentioned it as well, this year we've incorporated a module on creating healthy workplaces, you know, recognizing that need and touching back to the need for a strong and a respectful growth culture in an organization. And you know, our workforces now, there being lots of diversity, and the need to include people from different backgrounds, and you know, for the first time ever, we have 5 generations in the workforce. So how do we make people feel welcome and feel valued in an organization? So perhaps, James, you might touch on maybe some of the highlights of the course for you so far, please.
Yeah. So I suppose one of the highlights for myself, because as I said, learning and development became quite quickly something that I was hugely interested in. We had Thomas Garvin, who's I suppose a world-renowned lecturer and author on learning and development and training and development. So that was really interesting on that side. But also, I suppose there was a couple of lectures around the psychology and how you motivate and how you change people's abilities in their thinking, and about how they move forward and become the leadership inside of things, and also the culture as well. I think one of the best so far read that I saw was on a global talent development side was from Teleflex, and also from Stryker as well. You saw how the different pieces of the puzzle fitted together on a global scale, because that's kind of what I suppose HR has to be. Like, even on a local level, you're still interconnected globally with regards to the strategic elements, and also how different things fit in. Like, we did case studies as well around expats, and around how to, I suppose, bring information and transfer knowledge, all around that between the different departments of an organization to better empower people on the ground.
Yeah, and we have a strong focus on other areas. You mentioned that already, James, talent development, that expat, that idea of transitioning to other countries, and the analytics is a new feature, data analytics this year as well. So as well as the recruitment and retention, how can we bring people through the development and the talent pipeline, and what are the career progression routes for people. So, you've touched there, I think, James, on the strong research profile of faculty. You've also mentioned some of the guest lectures, and we do place a lot of emphasis on our guest lectures. And we've talked a little bit about the applied research projects, and we in the department are very excited about the applied research programs as well, and the projects, and we think exciting development for the program. So James, I would like to really thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We'll send your excuses to the lectures. Thank you for taking the time, and if you can hang around for the chat, that would be just fantastic. So thank you, and back to you, Trish.
Thanks, bye.
That's great. Thank you so much, James. We very much appreciate it. I know it's a busy time of the year for you. So I think that's the majority of our speakers. We might have a chat with Stefan Juice, who is the Programme Director of the Higher Diploma in Human Resource Management in a little while. In the meantime, I am just going to give a quick recap of what we talked about today in relation to the entry requirements, but also in relation to the application side. So the entry requirements for the MSc in Human Resource Management, students need to have or expect to receive a second-class honours grade 1 in a level 8 degree. So again, as Maeve mentioned, just to be aware, this can be in any area, and there's no previous experience or knowledge of HR required or assumed. We also do take students who have a 2H2 on a case-by-case basis as well, depending on their experience. The HDIP then in Human Resource Management is a little different. So this one is a part-time program. So students who are on this program are normally working, which is great. They can fit that in around their full-time work commitments. The entry requirements for this one are a minimum of a level 7 degree, but you do need 2 years work experience with this. Again, this can be part-time, full-time work experience in any area. And again, we also have taken students with a level 6 degree who have relevant experience. So that's the information really, higher diploma in human resource management. I'll talk a little bit about the application process. It's a very simple process. You apply online at www.ucc.ie/en/apply. Just to make you aware as well, we do have a chat function in the YouTube's live link. So if you do have any questions, do pop them in there and we can answer them at the end of the webinar, or we can answer them afterwards. So with the application process, we don't need a huge amount of information in relation to motivation statements or filling in long forms. We really do just look at your work experience for higher diploma and your undergraduate degree results. So you should get through the application around 10-15 minutes. You can apply for up to 2 programs, and the application process, or the application fee, is €50. Just an important point to note, our next round closing date is in May, but for both of these programs, there's quite a lot of interest. So if you are interested in applying, I would advise you to apply as soon as possible, as the program will close as soon as it's full. So I think that is our wrap up really. I would just like to give you our contact details there if you had any other questions. So as you can see there, Maeve O'Sullivan, Dr. Maeve O'Sullivan is the Programme Director for the MSc in Human Resource Management. Dr. Stefan Juice is the Programme Director for the HDIP in Human Resource Management. My name is Trisha Shaughnessy, and you can contact me at the email address there. I'm very happy to answer any questions. Finally, I would just like to thank everybody who took the time today to tune into this webinar. We very much appreciate your time. I'd like to thank the panel who gave up their time, both the students, both the staff, and also our external partners. We're very, very grateful. We know it's a busy time for everybody. I'd also like to thank our Cubs media team, who are the tech and marketing team in the background that kept everything running smoothly today, so we wouldn't have been able to do this without you. Finally, I'd just like to remind you of our next webinar series. This will take place on the 20th of April at 1 p.m. and this is on our MSc in Management and Marketing and our MSc in Strategic Marketing and Practice suite of programs through Management and Marketing. So thank you again, everybody, for your time and attention today, and I wish you the very best of luck for the rest of the week. Thank you.